show me what his plan and his will is. He's now using it to show me what it's going to be like in the future.
It was in the summer of 2008. I had just returned back home to Cleveland, Ohio, after living in San Diego for 2 years. One night, I fell asleep and dreamed that my entire immediate family, with our spouses and children, were floating in the middle of the sea on a dark and quiet night. We all had apparently just survived a great storm because all of our homes and belongings were floating out in the sea with us. As a matter of fact, we were floating on the broken pieces of our childhood home back in East Cleveland. There was a feeling of sadness amongst us and desperation because noticeably absent from the survivors was my father. Also, my mother was drowning, but fighting hard to stay afloat in the water because she had given up her place on one of the wood planks so that the younger ones could hold on and survive. It seemed as though we had been in the dark water forever, and just when we were all about to give up hope, we looked up and saw a great battleship in the distance, and it was heading our way. When the battleship approached us, we noticed that it had suffered irreparable damage and would not be the vessel to get us home. So we watched it travel out of our sight. Next, there came another ship which was much smaller than the first, and it appeared to be a naval destroyer. But it too had been damaged beyond repair and would no doubt go down in the murky waters shortly thereafter. Soon, the winds became stronger and started to shift us. The waves rolled high, and my mother was going up and down in the water. They were overtaking her. And when both she and us realized that her demise was near, she began to call out to me to give me her final instructions. Mama said that we were carrying too much extra weight and that we would have to throw some things off if we were going to survive. There were all sorts of things floating around us in the water that night, but there were just some things that we all refused to let go of. Some of us had carried things that came all the way from our childhood. Some carried trunks full of memories, and others had very valuable things taking up space from those like my mother, who was drowning because they had nothing to rest on while out in the deep. Mama told me to get the family together in one group because we were all scattered too far apart from each other to be successfully saved. She said to start with my eldest sibling Jesse Jr.'s family first, and then organize my own family last. She told me to make sure every family throws off their unnecessary things. I followed my mother's instructions, and I pulled my family together. I noticed that my brother Gary and his family were not in the waters with us. I'm not sure if they were with us prior to the storm and had not survived it, or if they had never been with us in the first place. I remember, even in my subconscious state, I assumed the latter, as they lived some 3,000 miles away in Southern California since the mid-1980s. As we all began to cast things off, it appeared that some of us struggled more than others to let some things go. My eldest brother, Jesse, and my eldest sister, Felicia, didn't seem to have any problems downsizing because their families didn't have as much as the others. Yet they appeared to be getting tossed by the winds worse than the rest of us. The trouble seemed to begin when I got to my sister Keitha, for it appeared that she had nothing left to let go of. Yet her and my brother-in-law Sherman's driftwood was barely moving at all in the water. Something was weighing them down, and my mother said, "Ask them what is under that yellow blanket." So I asked Keitha to take off the yellow blanket that was covering them. And when she did, her children Rachel and DJ, along with their children, were all balled up in a group. They appeared to be soaking wet and overcome by the cold, strong winds. So I told my sister to put the blanket back on them and keep them covered. Then I looked up to see my younger sister Tracy and her family floating by with ease on a thick plush mattress. They looked as comfortable as can be, in spite of just having endured such a great storm. Though they were floating by the rest of us at a very fast pace, I noticed that Tracy was concealing and tightly gripping a toy of mine from my early childhood that was simply known as Mr. Mooney. I told her that she needs to let it go because it belonged to me. But she refused and clenched it even tighter, saying, "It should have been mine." Mama noticed the disagreement and tried to mediate. She had often wondered what happened to my favorite toy and how it so conveniently disappeared nearly 40 years ago. My sister had taken the gift I favored the most to hurt me the very worst. When Mama attempted to rebuke her, Tracy replied to Mama, "Why should I let go of anything when Tiger has those 3 pillows he refuses to throw away?" Tiger being my nickname amongst my family and friends. I asked, "Is that all? These pillows are what I rest my head on at night, but I'm willing to throw off whatever needs to go so we all can move forward." I then grabbed 2 of the pillows and threw them off of my plank of wood and laid my head upon the other. My mother had slipped down deeper into the water, but she arose with one final breath and said, "Son, 2 ships done already passed, and a 3rd ship is on the way. It'll be the smallest of the ships that have come so far, yet it'll be the greatest ship of them all. Be ready to get on board, and you take this family home." Those words said, my mother sank into the depths of the sea, and she slowly drifted away. As the tears rolled down my face, I looked and beheld an old, tiny, little tugboat putting along the sea, with the horn sounding and the steam blowing out of its stack. It pulled up to us. The captain threw out the lifeline. One by one, each and every person passed on before me and climbed into the ship. Some were too weak to lift themselves out of the water, so I helped to lift them into the hands of the captain. Once everyone was on board, I climbed up on the ship and peered my eyes towards the shore. And there I saw my mother. She was dressed in a shiny white robe. Mama was absolutely marvelous. And she glowed like the moon and the stars. I remember thinking to myself that Mama had a plan all along, that her sacrifice would be a small price to pay if it meant her family being saved in the end. So amidst the tears, I looked at my mother and smiled and said, "See, Mama, we all are going to make it." Then she smiled right back at me and said, "And I knew you'd be the one to lead them all there." The once dark sea had now offered us a peaceful journey, and it was my mother's light that guided us the rest of the way back home. It was at this point that, though absent, I could clearly hear the voice of my father saying from heaven, "It done cared a many a thousand, son. 'Tis the old ship of Zion." Godspeed, son. See y'all when you get home. Tis the old ship of Zion. Tis the old ship of Zion. Tis the old ship of Zion. Children, y'all better get on board. Y'all better get on board.